Hello, hello, friends. Thank you for tuning in to the Odd Thoughts podcast. At the Odd Thoughts podcast, we like to talk about the everyday odd thoughts, discuss whatever comes to mind, and just have conversations on whatever relatable topics. My name is Gunther, and I am your host. Welcome to episode 21. Sorry, welcome to episode 21. For today's episode, for the first topic, I wanted to talk a little bit about maybe what it's like or what someone might experience when they're going through a near-death experience. Something that super creeps me out, but something that interests me because often it's like a out-of-body experience for people that go through that near-death experience. So I thought it would be kind of fun to try to delve into that a little bit. And then for the second topic, I wanted to transition into talking about, at least for me, one of the many dreams and like crazy scenarios I thought about as a teenage boy who was obsessed with like zombie games and just that kind of stuff is maybe what it would be like to survive a zombie apocalypse. If I could even survive a zombie apocalypse. And then for the third topic, I wanted to transition into maybe a little more serious, maybe a little more of a downer topic and talking about what it's like to lose a loved one, something that has happened to me and something that's unfortunate and the ups and downs that might go with that. But then for the fourth topic, I wanted to end it on a happier topic. I wanted to end it on maybe some unexpected actors that are in horror movies that were in horror movies more so in like the beginning of their careers. So if you want to listen to any of that, then I appreciate you tuning in. Please enjoy. How's everybody doing though? I hope everybody's doing okay. I really appreciate everybody coming through, listening to the podcast, and I quite often try to say that I do appreciate the chance to even get a opportunity to talk to people. I know that I've made some mistakes in my life. I know that we've probably all made quite a few mistakes actually. Some big, some small, some way more inconvenient than others. But I know that I'm gonna probably make more mistakes in my life, right? So I tried to think about not letting those mistakes affect me too much. No matter how wrong of the choice I made, or, maybe it's not that far off of the right choice, whatever that may mean, but I know that that's what part of being human is. I know that I'm going to have my chance to make those mistakes right, to right the wrongs. And inevitably, I'll probably have my opportunities to make the right choice right off the bat, whatever the right choice is, depending on the situations. Making the right choices helps us realize that we're more than just a problem. If we let mistakes hold on to us and maybe we let them pile up, then it could be understandable to kind of to see it be hard to view us as making being able to make a good choice or the right choice. So mistakes are just what makes us human. Mistakes are just part of the normal. And I know that everybody is going to continue to do the best they can. And that's all you can really ask for. And just know that when the wrong happens and when you do make mistakes, that's not the end. That you do have a chance to make things better, and I know that you will have the chance to make things better, and you will do that. But yeah, I really hope that you all are doing okay. I know I'm doing okay. Like I said, we're around spooky season. That's what I said, in the last episode. I was talking a little bit about I kind of get really into this time of season. It at least I get into the fall more so. October and Halloween is just the transitional period before it kind of feel like fall is really in the midst of it. But I love that on all these different channels, whenever I don't watch TV too often, but quite often, even on streaming services, you around this time of year you start seeing the flood of like horror movies and Halloween centered movies. Now, I always say that like you can watch horror movies anytime you want. You can watch Halloween movies anytime you want as well. It don't matter. It really as long as you enjoy it and you have some sort of entertainment through it, then you don't have to wait till October or you don't have to wait till Halloween to enjoy those types of things. But it really did get me thinking kind of like some of the like for sure Halloween movies that I have to watch, at least for me. I have like a few that I just think like this time of year, it always pops up in my head. I know that very clichély, I think Hocus Pocus is like a classic Halloween movie. I know that it feels like this is the time when I think about it most too, and it's just a good movie. It's like it's a classic to me, especially I've watched it since I was a kid, and it encompasses that spookiness of Halloween and that whole time of year, and it takes place around that time of year as well. Another thing I really remember growing up with and watching tons of times was Halloween Town. I loved Halloween Town growing up, and still very much so do love Halloween Town. I think I kind of remember like few of them coming out, but I really only remember like maybe the first two. I just thought it would be so cool thinking about going to Halloween World, Halloween Town, clichely of the name, right? But even as I got a little older, certain movies like Poltergeist. Poltergeist is a movie that I don't mind watching year round, but just has this that certain spooky kind of haunted house vibe, right? That it just feels perfect for the Halloween season. I literally feel like this. It's like I said. I think about it more so around this time of year, and that movie it just freaks me out. It's just a good movie, and when you kind of hear about some of the behind the scenes stuff, it really adds to that eeriness of that movie. I think I see it more often. I don't ever see it on TV regularly, but watching the first two Creep shows. I know that there's a third one that I've watched maybe once, but Creep Show. It's my style of like kind of horror where I like the anthology type thing where it's maybe different stories kind of equating to one thing. And the Creep Show movies are so fantastic. Think about like the Blob, like skit or scary skit. I don't. I guess they're called skits. I don't. It makes it less scary when you call it skits, but like the Blob one or the one that has was it Leslie Nielsen and Ted Danson, right? Yeah, Ted Danson. Sorry. Also, Stephen King obviously he's the big purveyor behind the Creep Show, like behind I don't know if he wrote like the actual like stories or if he wrote one or two of them, but he pops up in both Creep Show movies, and I think it's just so creepy. And I love those movies, but those are some movies that I think like around this time I think of more. And I think, you can watch horror movies and scary movies all year around, but it feels special when it's this time of year. Rocky Horror Picture Show is like another thing which kind of random. I don't even know if that takes place around Halloween. I don't think it does or anything. It's not even it's like a horror adjacent, it's just called Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's not a horror movie, but it feels very much so that vibe. Just all the costumes and how everybody's dressed and all those set pieces. It's that vibe. It's the Halloween season. I think I think it's okay to give yourself, like I said, it's okay to watch them all year round, but especially Halloween, why not feed into it a little bit? So I definitely have fun feeding into it. But yeah, like I said, I'm generally doing okay. I'm glad that I get to come up and do podcasts. So, episode 21, like I said, for the first topic, I wanted to talk a little bit about what it'd be like to experience like a near death experience. So, without further ado, let's step into the first topic. Okay, so for the first topic, I kind of wanted to talk about what it would be like to experience a near death experience. More so, I guess I wanted to dive into what the experience is like, what people have said the experience is like. From what the research I've kind of done, I saw that really the phrase near death experience was coined more so in the late 1800s. I think like the late like 1890s or something like that. And it always has been related to that closeness to death, like the dying, but you're not there. And possibly even the kind of seen as a moving on experience, potential of moving on to whatever afterlife you may believe there is. But inevitably, it's always something that seems like it can be, it's like on that edge of it can be reversed, but it also may not be. Often, I think as experienced, as I read, was experienced more so in like hospitals, people that were dying of like an illness or something like that, something terminal in that sense. But the experience itself always starts with like certain stages, or it always has like these certain stages, these certain steps. Usually it starts with that person kind of dying and them also knowing that they're dead. Often people actually know that they are dead, that they have passed away theoretically. Also, it kind of also leads to, like I said, an out of body experience. Sometimes people feel like they're looking on at themselves, that they're watching themselves laying in bed and watching themselves die, which is a very surreal thing to think about. To even be aware that you have moved on is crazy to even think about and hard to think about, especially since we are so connected to the living world as we are alive. But then inevitably, inevitably, sorry, someone goes through a certain passageway. Oh, it always people always say that there is a certain like tunnel to a light, as people always talk about. And often what I was reading is that people who are more religious or they're more spiritual kind of view it as that ascension into kind of heaven, that the light is God or whatever it may be. And then when they kind of get to that light and they make it to the light, there's this whole life review as you're shooting through this theoretical tunnel, this ethereal tunnel. That's when we get that phrase of, your life flashes before your eyes kind of thing. Is that time review, that life review. All of a sudden everything kind of floods through. And then most people talk about being faced with a decision of returning. And quite often, from what I was reading, is that people had a certain reluctance towards returning. I found that kind of interesting and maybe different in some people, especially like if you came to the acceptance of passing on, that you kind of are in this bad spot and you're close to that death and you've kind of accepted the fact that you might have to move on one day. So maybe that reluctance is more heavy in that sense. But also from I've heard that people are pretty quick to come back too. And then inevitably, because we talk of it as a near death experience and not a death experience, eventually people come back. And just to think of having this out of body experience, that's what I really hold on to with this is it's just crazy to think about the powers of the mind. I remember thinking, or not thinking, but one time I was watching this interview that it was Stan Lee and Larry King, I think, and they were talking about kind of the concept of dying and in accepting death, and they were talking about the that maybe something it's nothing, but they can't wrap their heads around the concept of nothing forever. So it kind of makes you think about the idea that we have these out of body experiences. And quite often when people go through these near death experiences, it's more positive, more time mostly. I read that most times people have this kind of euphoric feeling that they have like pain, no pain, they've let go of the pain and they've come to accept it and they kind of feel this peace, this very, like I said, euphoric type feeling. And I can understand that, especially like I said, if you were currently or you were previously going through this crazy suffering and you feel sick and you're ill and stuff like that, that all of a sudden you don't have any of that pain can feel very peaceful, very euphoric. And also people quite often talk about seeing like loved ones as well. not just the loved ones that maybe are around you at that current moment, if there are, but like loved ones that have gone already, people that have passed on. I'll talk about that in a couple topics here is losing a loved one. So it's a very heartwarming thing and kind of an uplifting idea to think that maybe there are people waiting for us, but also maybe those people are sitting there trying to convince you to go back, trying to say, hey, like you're not done on Earth. That there's people on Earth and that need you, and you do have a purpose still. And also that idea of going into the light, which is kind of scary. Maybe death in general, like at least for me, I think it's kind of a scary thing to think about. It's because it's a very real thing to think about. That I don't even think I can handle even going through a near death experience. I don't mean to laugh about that, but and I don't know if I would hope that I feel that kind of peace and that very positive euphoric feeling, but I've heard that also people will sometimes feel anguish, you know. They're angry. They feel this void, this emptiness, they don't feel like they're peaceful. They don't feel like they're moving on. They feel like they're dying. Maybe it's a very real feeling of, oh, this is the end. And sometimes, I'm a person that maybe sometimes could be a little pessimistic that I might be angry that I'm dying, and I don't want to ever think about it like that though. Hopefully I think about I'll die in, 70 years from now and I'm not dying anytime soon, but I probably will be angry just having to leave this world. So that moving on, I don't think I think I'm glad that it's seen as more of a euphoric feeling for most people because I also believe that I'm probably more common to people than I think I am. Than I maybe I even realize more so. Yeah. But also people talk about after like when they've come through and they've returned back to the real world that maybe they're not necessarily healthy all of a sudden. That's not necessarily what happens, but people will often have a change in how they look at the world or how they just outview things in general. People will often have like compassion for the world and in it itself and compassion for others that they may have not had before. You kind of understand people's plights and you kind of understand how people struggle just like you do. Also, it helps with people's self-esteem apparently. People start to feel a little bit better about themselves and also a little bit more of that appreciation for life too. You may not have felt so great before and then all of a sudden you're that close to death. I can understand how it would flip you all of a sudden. You kind of run into that wall and you bounce off and I would appreciate life a lot more probably too. And often I think it also gives a spiritualism to people. That's what I read was that people maybe weren't super spiritual or super religious or something like that beforehand, but after that experience, it quite makes them think about maybe something more. It quite often makes them think about something more, that there is a greater purpose, that there's a greater God. And also, yeah, like a sense of purpose that maybe people before didn't really know what they were doing in life, but you kind of realize that death will happen and you don't want to be part of that kind of thing, or you want to try to make the most of the time you have. And also maybe the fact that you maybe just don't worry about death. That actually maybe that you kind of just like forgive everything. That you're like, okay, well, if it happens one day, then I know what it's like, and you have a new appreciation for life. Hopefully, that you're just gonna keep moving forward and maybe make the most out of what you didn't have before, or what you didn't think you could have before. But it's just crazy to think about this experience that people go through, and a lot of people have. But also, it was kind of an interesting thing. I was kind of looking at sometimes there's some sort of doubt towards it, that there's a doubt towards people actually going through this sort of, ascension into another, into moving on into an afterlife or whatever, or the near ascension to it. I've read stuff that like could be endorphins and it could be, serotonin and it could be, all those like random chemicals that your brain holds, kind of all those things like a psychedelic experience or something like that that your brain is kind of giving you an illusion of peace, that it's making you feel like you're moving on and you're getting all these like visuals and you're seeing all these things, but it's because your brain's kind of rushing, it's got all these flooding of these chemicals and these fluids and whatnot. We know the brain's powerful, so we know it's capable of doing that type of stuff, and very much so. It's it wouldn't be too far from thinking that it could be maybe the truth for some people. But I try to sometimes think about being a spiritual person and or try to think that I want to be sort of religious, and so I like to think that maybe it is some way for someone to come into some sort of peace, that eventually it will happen, and and hopefully it does give appreciation and makes you feel a little bit better about life, and it doesn't make you feel worse. Yeah, so that's all I really wanted to talk about with the first topic, near death experience. We'll move on to something a little bit more lighthearted. Okay, so for the second topic, I wanted to think about something that has literally it's something I've thought about since I was a kid, since I played my first, zombie video game or watched my first zombie movie, is what it would be like, possibly what it would be like to live in a zombie apocalypse, to maybe more so survive a zombie apocalypse. Last episode I was talking about the idea of like a real life Cloverfield situation, so kind of another survival scenario, a fantastical survival scenario, a fictitious maybe survival scenario. But just like with the real life Cloverfield thing, I think because of how advanced social media and technology is and stuff like that, that the announcement would be pretty quick. I'm sure that everybody would know pretty soon. And I quite often think about even how we would know. Like, how do you know people are zombies and it's just not like some, people are just like going through some delirium or something like that? I would hope that it's not like a fast spreading thing, that if we're talking about it just starting, that it's not a big problem right off the bat, that it's not like a small landlocked island was full of these zombies and somehow they got off the island and spread into other land or whatever. Or I've read in like the news that as we kind of explore the Arctic and stuff like that, and some places that haven't really been explored in a long time, that sometimes these like ancient, they call them fossil diseases or whatever, they resurface or whatever, or viruses or whatever resurface. So one of them just waiting in the low, just to come and infect everybody with a zombie virus that we have never seen before. That'd be even crazy to think about in like a scenario of 28 days later, where if you're like Killian Murphy, his character wakes up out of a coma, which is throwing your world through a freaking loop. You might be able to plan a little bit better when it just started. You can kind of maybe even contain it right off the bat. But for a person who maybe has been in a coma, or it wouldn't be society, I guess, but think about waking up 28 days later, a month later, everything's abandoned, nobody on the streets, nobody in the hospital. Even the miraculousness of you somehow waking up and being alive would be crazy. But I try to think about what even my first action is. What's my first type of plan? That's too difficult. Like I said, I hope that even that we can try to figure it out. That there's so many different things that could be maybe even the cause of infection, right? Not just like a virus that was hidden in AIDS for, hundreds, 100,000 years or something like that. But what was it in a zombie land? Wasn't it like mad cow disease that just like evolved into something else or whatever? or a lot of people who were, the anti-vaxxers with the COVID-19 vaccine. Everybody was going to turn into a zombie or something like that. And would that even affect like how what kind of zombie there is? And hopefully, cross my finger just like every, video game I've ever played that I'm immune. I have some sort of special thing in my blood or something that makes me immune to this infection. That it's even like maybe the infection it could start with one person. Like I said, maybe it's there was a small island of these zombie people, that had been kind of isolated for so long until they were contacted, and then the zombies got off the island. However, that would work, you know. And imagine like it would have to be you have to get bit to be infected, right? Is that how it works? Or do you have to just be around enough zombies to get infected? Usually it's always a bite. That's always what it is. It's blood or saliva type thing. Or a combination of kind of both. When you get bit, it's the saliva going into your blood and you don't want to ingest zombie blood, I guess. I don't think that's probably good for anybody. And hopefully, and is it like a fast acting thing? Like Dawn of the Dead, it almost felt like it was pretty like it lasted for a while. It's depending how bad your wound was. You can heal in some zombie games, right? Some people, like I said, if you're immune, it just makes it easy. You can get bit, I'm sure, and you probably would die just from it being infected, not from a zombie virus, but just being an open wound. Hopefully, you get that cleaned up though. But yeah, let's just just assuming that I don't get infected, right? And it may be that whatever type of infection it is, that the zombies that we get out of it are are like walking zombies, the Night of the Living Dead zombies, if you will. The, slow tumbling, not very lethal type zombies, the ones that we all love in video games. Not the zombies like in like 28 Days Later. They kind of started that whole trend of running zombies. And that was always like a creepy thing in Left 4 Dead. If you ever played any zombie game, really is you'd get a mixture sometimes of some slow stalking zombies that are dumb and they no real threat. You can kind of just walk past them, and then some that run at you, and even some that are even crazier to think about, like even more so. Like they like, in Left 4 Dead it was like the spitter, right? And the tank and all these like crazy morphed, evolved zombies. And would that be like what would happen over time? Is that like over time the zombies would be like evolved? Evolved in either a good or not a good, but like a bad or a good way. Yeah, I guess you could say that way, just not as how I thought it. Maybe they get dumber. Maybe their brains just rot so much that they literally just become like a nothing thing. But you would have to maybe question that the zombies are still human in some way, right? The brain still has certain, things saved in it. I feel like that was always the thing with Resident Evil is that some of the zombies were still very much so aware. They were like these smart zombies or whatever. In Resident Evil, it's a virus. It was a laboratory virus that caused the zombie apocalypse, unfortunately. But just think that even like see that would be even a messed up thing to think about causing of infection is a laboratory thing that was made. But yeah, even be like I said, let's just hope that I'm immune. Let's just say that. And let's say that I have a pretty idealistic scenario that the zombies are slow zombies. Maybe there are some runners and stuff like that, but most of them are just stumbling zombies, kind of. Shaun of the Dead type, you know what I'm saying? So what is even my first plan? Like I don't even know what to think, like what's the first thing you do? I suppose I'd probably try to make sure that my family's okay. I'd probably make sure that my friends are okay, right? But you can't really think beyond that. I think it's like you're pretty much in pure survival mode. And there's obviously no real outline to how to survive a zombie apocalypse. You know, we have movies and video games, but if it was a real life scenario, you probably wouldn't know what to do. It maybe wouldn't be what it is in those things, right? It'd be a totally different experience. But I think about trying to like I right now one of my favorite games that I've been playing with my little sister is a game called Project Zomboid. And this game is freaking fun all the way. And in that one it's a lot of like, you know, collecting supplies and you have to make sure you ration things and you can survive a long time in that game and like eventually the power and water shuts off and you know zombies change and things evolve. So that's what I kind of think would be the realistic thing. So just like in that game, I think I'd try to get out of like the main city. I try to do my best to try to either travel as long as possible, however that is, you know, try to hop car to car or you know, siphon gas and collect supplies as I kind of go on or maybe as I kind of collect supplies and kind of build up enough of something or enough of a you know, repartee. I don't want to say it like that, but enough of my tools and enough supplies that I can maybe live off the grid. Because in Project Zomboid, there's not a lot of zombies in like the you know outside you know of the urban areas. Usually, like in the middle of like the forest, there's not usually a lot. So maybe it'd be easier to try to like barricade myself in just a small little fort that I build and stay there for a while and if I was by myself, it'd be a little easier, I think. I kind of just got to worry about me and you can kind of pick up and move as I please. But, you know, if I had my family with me, it'd put a whole nother stress. It'd put a whole nother level of stress on me, on everybody, obviously. But I think the idea is just to try to get out of where there's a lot of people because maybe not everybody gets infected, but, you know, some people are infected and some people inevitably will be infected. Not everybody's, you know, keen to survival. I don't know if I'm necessarily keen to survival. So, really, the question is even how long I'm going to survive. I think I have to be kind of real with myself, kind of real, and say that I might not survive super long. And morbidly, maybe thinking about that, I don't think I can or even want to live a life in the zombie apocalypse where everything is not as it is. But also, if I find my peace off the grid and I have my family and we're all okay and we learn to do it, you know, we kind of learn to live, then obviously I have no choice but to live. Maybe we could even like outlast the zombie apocalypse. Maybe there's enough people trying to contain things and, you know, like a task force that comes through that just kills off all zombies, you know what I'm saying? You know, I'll help out. Zombie kill of the week. You know, I could pull off a few of those. Oh, dude. Hopefully it's just like, you know, remove the head or destroy the brain type thing, right? Just any classic zombie movie. Yeah, but I mean, ever since I was a kid, I've always thought about what it would be like, and I'd like I said, it's very. I think I'd be pretty simple with my survival. I would either try to keep moving as much as possible, and I'd hopefully have my family. I wouldn't be looking for other survivors, and maybe eventually, if I find like an off the grid scenario where I can just kind of do my thing off the grid or barricade myself in some cabin, kind of remote cabin, then I'm doing that. Set up traps and stuff like that. Just try to survive as long as possible. That's literally all you can do. I just remember playing like games like Resident Evil and playing Left 4 Dead and Dead Rising and Dead Island. A lot of Dead. Those games were just so awesome, and it really got that I didn't ever have to know because I played those games, so I know what it's like. I could do it. And the movies like you know Dawn of the Dead, not only the original one but the remake as well. Just so much of that. You know, watching that so much. Night of the Living Dead eventually when I was kind of a little older. But yeah, I don't imagine I think we're gonna go through a zombie apocalypse anytime soon, so it's safe to say I think we're okay. And it's safe to say I don't have to worry about it. But I'm scared. I'm just gonna do it. I played enough video games to know. But a little bit about the zombie apocalypse. How many people out there do you think could survive? Do y'all think y'all could survive? Do y'all think y'all would maybe know exactly what to do, and maybe that we could outlast it as a whole? If enough people band together, we could outlast it. But yeah, zombie apocalypse. Transition to topic three. Okay, moving into topic three. Um, I'm gonna go a little bit back down a little bit on the mood a little bit. Something that I was talking about in the first topic with the near death experience when some people talk about having seen loved ones, people that have passed in their life and stuff like that. And sometimes even thinking about it as like their guardian angel. But that got me kind of thinking about the idea of losing a loved one. It's something that's very tough and whether it's family or it's a friend, someone that you're very close to, or someone that you're maybe not necessarily even that close to. A loved one doesn't mean that you're super close to them all the time. I think it's hard to deal with though. Nonetheless, doesn't matter. And I don't know if it's necessarily easier when you know they're going to die and someone's going to die and move on. I don't know if that's necessarily easy. I don't know if it's easier to plan out and think that, okay, well, I got to come to terms with it, that I'm going to lose this person that I love. And I don't think it makes it easier. I know, and maybe it's harder maybe when it is a sudden thing. I can't imagine. I mean, it's hard to imagine losing a loved one in general, especially when it's a sudden thing. When even themselves, they don't know what's happening and they didn't know they were on that, close to death either. I think whether it is like I said, whether it's a close relationship or not, you always think about everything you've done with that person immediately. I feel like it's always just memories that just flood through, as few as there are and as many as there are. And that's a nice thing. I think it helps us remember how much we do love that person, and hopefully those memories will always last forever. And that's kind of what brings people back. People maybe will leave this world physically, but the idea is that maybe they kind of stick around through people talking about them and memories and stuff like that. That truly your spirit never dies. But even thinking about what could have been or what could be, sometimes people die too early in life and you lose a loved one with so much time of their life left. And it's the could haves and the would haves and what ifs that that hurt more. The memories are what makes you happy, and remembering how much you love and feeling that love is what makes it a good experience. But then you think about, well, they never got a chance to do this, or oh, they have they have siblings that they left behind, or kids, or a significant other, or something like that. They were too. It was often thinking maybe it was too early, or sometimes like a what would have been, as in, or could have been, as in maybe things weren't that great before. Sometimes that's a big regret is that people have is that the last time you've seen someone or the last few times or the last time you've talked to them, the last few times you've talked to them or whatever that it wasn't that pleasurable or that you haven't reached out to them as often as you could have or that you could have been around them more and the what ifs. Like I said, those what ifs can tear you apart. Absolutely can tear you apart. And like I said, it doesn't make it easy when you plan it or plan it's even a weird thing to say when you expect it. But I will say one thing is that from my personal experience, I often think about my loved ones that I've lost, the ones that really have been maybe closest to me and most relevant to me. I don't relevant's a weird thing to say. The closest family members I've lost so far are my grandma, my mom's mom, my grandma Hurley, and then my uncle Todd, who is my dad's sister's husband. And I'm honest in saying that I probably wasn't super close to both of them. Truly, I wasn't super close to my uncle Todd, and I'm not super close to my mom's side of the family necessarily. I love them to death, and every time I'm around them, it's amazing. But I know I wasn't super close to my grandma Hurley. But it still doesn't change that fact that when they died, it was hard. I cried hard, and I quite often was not just thinking about myself. Obviously, I was thinking about how everybody felt. I knew it wasn't easy, and I knew it wasn't easy for a lot of other people. My uncle Todd, when he died, it was like, what happens with my aunt Heidi? What happens with my cousin Spencer and Colton? They lost their dad. When I lost my grandma Hurley, what happens with my aunts and uncles and what happens with my mom? What happens with my cousins? It just was really hard to think about the suffering that everybody was going through, the sadness and pain, and that made it harder for me. I think I cried. I just don't mean to laugh at it, but I think I cried harder because I just thought about how sad everybody was. But something that I live on, and I know a lot of people live on, is that you are going to see them again one day. Hopefully. I love to think about the idea that maybe in an afterlife, if there is some sort of heaven or some sort of place that we do all go, that, when you reach there and you get into the place, that all those loved ones and all those people that you cared about that you lost, they're sitting there waiting for you, open arms, giving you hugs, waving for you. We're over here. Every even with like pets, like little kitties and your little dogs, coming running up to you. So I try to think about that, see him again one day. But also, like I said, like as long as you have memories that maybe they don't truly die. If you constantly remember them, you talk good about them, you keep them in conversation, and I don't think people truly die. You can leave this world physically, but hopefully you leave behind enough of a legacy that people want to keep bringing it up. Makes me want to cry a little bit. I get emotional when I talk about these things. A little choked up. But I think about the one day when I leave this world too is I don't want anybody to feel sad. Yeah, I guess I do want people to miss me, right? Is you want people to miss you, but you don't want people to regret the time that they spent with you or something like that, or the time that they didn't spend with you. I didn't get to spend a lot of time with my grandma Hurley or my uncle Todd, or I just didn't spend a lot of time with them, so the regret sets in a lot. But I also know that I did spend a lot of good time. The times that I did spend with them were great. But I know that everybody can experience that. I think everybody will eventually lose a loved one, and you won't forget them. You please don't forget them. And I'm talking about loved ones. I'm not talking about people that aren't necessarily in your family because you may not love everybody in your family. And that's a hard thing to even admit. You don't maybe necessarily outright hate them, and that can be a weird in between even too. Like, is that like you just don't have any? Maybe you don't even know like much about them, and they're kind of a part of a distant family. I've lost family members that are part of my family, and obviously it's sad, but I just didn't really, I didn't know them that much, so I don't think I know what to be sad about if I am sad about something. I'm sad about just people leaving the world. I don't like to hear about death, and even outside of my own family, like don't like to hear about that stuff. It makes me sad. Makes me sad to hear about death in the world. But yeah, keeping those memories alive, talking about people, talk good about people, the ones that you really care about, the ones that you love, and maybe one day you will see them again. They'll be waiting for you. I promise. Yeah, that's a quick little topic though. We'll get out of this depressing topic and move on to the next one. Okay, we'll finish it out on a lighter hearted topic. I wanted to talk about for the last topic. I wanted to talk about some unexpected actors in horror movies, or maybe some people maybe that you may not expect. I don't know. Some people you may expect, but and specifically early in their career, kind of like before they blew up and before they became super famous. And I was laughing. Over time I've watched horror movies, and you recognize people, and you're like, you kind of get confused. You're like, how do you even get in this movie? And then you look it up and you realize it's like right before they did anything. It's one of their first roles or one of their first major roles, and you're like, okay, well, I suppose you got to cut your teeth on something. So a low budget horror movie or a random horror movie is acceptable. Most of the ones on this list are pretty low budget, so we'll get into it. So the first person I have on the list, which I thought was pretty funny, the first two were in the same film franchise but different films. So the first one is Leonardo DiCaprio. Good old Leo. He was in a movie called Critters 3. It made in 1991. If you know anything about the Critters franchise, it's kind of a cheesy ripoff of Gremlins in a way. A little more horror centric, a little bit slapsticky, kind of like that. It was kind of capitalizing on that whole small creature vibe. The first two movies are what they are. The third movie is the critters invade an apartment building, and they like take out the people in the apartment, specifically the bad people, like the evil landlord and whatever, and like the evil maintenance man or whatever. And there's a character named Charlie who's like in like the second, third, and fourth one, and he's like a critter hunter basically, kind of thrown into the job. But Leonardo DiCaprio plays a guy named Josh. What a good old white boy name. And he's the evil landlord's stepson, and he makes it to the end, thankfully. He's like the love interest and one of the families that moves in, like daughter type thing. It's dumb. It's literally, I would not recommend going to watch the movie. I 100% don't, but if you're into cheesy horror, then I do recommend going to watch that movie. But before that, he did a couple things. He was literally on like a few TV shows. He was on a soap opera called Santa Barbara. He also was on Growing Pains. He kind of came in later on that Growing Pains show, like season 7, I think is what I read. And then he did the movie Parenthood. He did the TV show based on the movie. I didn't read what's his character here. I have it written down, I think. Oh no, I don't. Sorry, I don't have his character written down. But just like random TV shows, like a few episodes here, a few episodes there, and eventually got this movie, and then we get kind of the Leo that we know. A few years after that would be the Basketball Diaries, which is an absolutely fantastic movie, one of my favorites that he does. And then he did like Romeo and Juliet, another one of my favorites that I absolutely love that movie. And then obviously like What We Know Now. I would say those movies are a couple of my favorite movies that he's done. And honestly, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, probably one of my other favorite Leonardo DiCaprio movies. But it's just kind of funny to think about how talented he is and how he's kind of been known as a serious actor. And even in like when you watch him in that movie, he's not into it. He's definitely not into it. He's a kid, so he's just like trying to make a check and trying to cut his teeth on the industry. But yeah, moving on to the next movie in the franchise, Critters 4 starred a couple people actually surprisingly, once not so surprising, but one surprising. One of the actors in it is a man named Brad Dourif, and if you know who Brad Dourif is, he's the voice of Chucky. So very much so a man of horror, you know? But another very famous actress in that movie, in Critters 4, was Angela Bassett. Critters 4 was filmed literally or it was filmed back to back with Critters 3, but it came out like the next year. And the grand idea that they had for that one was in the year 2045, the last two critter eggs managed to make it on like a pod along with our hero Charlie, who's the critter hunter. and they make it onto the RSS Tesla, which is just like the ship that's I don't know what they're doing. I literally don't know what the purpose of the ship is. But Angela Bassett's her character Angela Bassett's character's name is Fran, and she's the pilot. So she's got a pretty badass character, and she's got some badass moments. She like, I think kills the critters, kills a couple critters, maybe one or something like that. Kills another person who's kind of a bad guy, and there's this whole like intergalactic like law government thing underlining storyline. It's terrible. It's terrible. But Angela Bassett's absolutely fantastic in that movie. And she commits pretty hard. I mean, like, she's a serious actress just like Leo, but she was older with that, when she was in that, she was an adult, so it was a job for her, like a real job. But before that, she did just random like episodes of like she was on like the Cosby Show for like an episode. She did like or like a couple episodes. She did like a random soap opera here and there, and then she was in Boys in the Hood as well. And she also did what else did Kindergarten Cop. She I guess was like a flight attendant or a stewardess on the flight, like towards the beginning when they're like going to the town and before Arnold Schwarzenegger becomes a teacher. But then the exact same year she did Critters. She did what did she do? It was the Jacksons and Dream. Jacksons and American Dream, which is about the Jackson 5, and she played the mom, Katherine Jackson. But she also did Malcolm X. She was Betty Shabazz in Malcolm X, which is Malcolm X's wife, right? I'm pretty sure. Yeah. That's the same year that Critters 4 was, which was 92. So that was like this whole breakout for her. And then she just would go on to do incredible movies. She did the one with where she was Tina Turner, right? What the hell was it? Um, I forget what the movie. I wish I would have wrote it down. Why didn't I write it down? Why, or at least the title. I know the movie. She plays Tina Turner, but also then like how I was introduced to her and how Stella got her groove back. Absolutely fantastic in that movie. Absolutely fantastic in that movie. But also to think about where she's come to, like thinking about she's in the like Black Panther in the Marvel universe, just such a big name and such a beautiful woman. And like I said, humble beginnings, humble beginnings. I'll try to move a little quickly through the next couple. The next two were in the same exact movie. They both were in it's you can either call it you could either call it Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation, or you could call it The Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Apparently they had like some dual title crap going on. But it's literally a basic slasher. It's four teens after prom, partying, driving around, cruising around. Their car breaks down and excuse me, their car breaks down and they eventually kind of get picked off one by one and there's one final girl and Leatherface is chasing them down and you also get introduced as you usually do in the movies, you get introduced to Leatherface's family, which this time around they changed their name to the Slaughter family instead of the Sawyers, which has kind of always been what they were. But I will kind of group them together in that the next two actors I'm talking about are Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger. Both just huge names in such a stupid, stupid movie. In one of the other sequels for the Texas, like the third one, Viggo Mortensen's in that. And I could have done him on this list, but I thought it'd be funner to do these two. Excuse me. Yeah, but Matthew McConaughey, he plays Leatherface's brother. His name is Wilmer. He has like this big like leg brace thing, this pump action like leg brace thing on him, and he's just a psycho, absolutely insane, like way over the top, like batshit crazy. Excuse my language. Before that movie, he literally did like an episode of Unsolved Mysteries, but he also happened to do Dazed and Confused right before that movie, so kind of put him in that spotlight. And then he also was in Angels in the Outfield, which are absolutely fantastic movie. He played Ben Williams, I think was the name of the character. So absolutely great movies. And but then to think about doing this movie, and it was kind of You could tell maybe it was a bigger starring role for him. Not only that, but it was kind of a push from maybe who he was as a person. Dazed and Confused is kind of maybe who we think Matthew McConaughey is, like who his personality is. But he's just such a psycho, and this movie's crazy. I mean, it's very much so a classic slasher, and like it's four teenagers messing around, doing drugs, being sexual, leaving prom, hunted down. Classic slasher. And I think it's like the fifth one or the fourth one. I can't remember. But Matthew McConaughey after that would be in a string of rom coms. I'm not really a fan of that time of Matthew McConaughey, even though that was what made him kind of famous. But I will give him a lot of props when I say that him doing Dallas Buyers Club and Interstellar, like those movies, like within a few years of each other, it's unreal. I think those movies are absolutely fantastic, and you could tell that he had that shift in his career where he wanted to be taken a little bit more serious, and he wanted to do serious roles, and you could see through his like filmography that he always kind of threw those kind of movies in. He had a bunch of movies where he kind of maybe tried that out. It just didn't hit. And very much so, I think this movie was one of those like he tried being kind of over the top, and he was in a slasher movie. He was trying to be a psycho in a slasher movie. But you're not the main killer. And he dies at the end. Randomly he gets taken out by an airplane wheel. Stupid. But also like I said, also in the same movie we have Miss Renee Zellweger. And she plays one of the teens. She plays the one like surviving teen. Her name is Jenny. And she gets like a couple moments where she gets away and then like recaptured, and classic, sitting at the dinner table with the rest of the Slaughter family, and they're acting all creepy and they're cannibalistic, and they want to slice her up and eat her, and she gets away and like gets the better of like one of the family members. I think like the grandfather or like the mother or something like that. I can't remember. But you think she's gonna take out Matthew McConaughey's character at the end, but the plane comes in and kills him. So it's like, so she doesn't get to. Excuse me, but I love that. And before that, Renee Zellweger was kind of actually apparently was popping a little bit before that. She was in a movie called A Taste for Killing. She played a character called Mary Lou. She was in another movie called Shake, Rattle, and Roll, which actually, well, from what I was reading, was pretty popular. Which I think was a TV film, but it was still pretty popular. It was kind of a musical type, movie. Suzanne was her name in that. And then she also happened to be in Dazed and Confused. Her name's Nessie. She's in one of the scenes. She goes uncredited though. Which is kind of crazy, but she has a character name. I think they say her name in the scene. But not only, it's just funny to think about those two actors, Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger, both being in the same horror movie, but also this like other movie before that. But then after that, or even like the same year that she did Texas Chainsaw Massacre, she did Empire Records. She was Gina in Empire Records, which if you ever seen Empire Records, got Liv Tyler in it. It's just a good movie. It's a good movie. And just kind of it gives you like that. It's the teenagers, hanging out at the record store, and they work there, and they're all having fun, and she's good in that. And then would eventually go on to do Jerry Maguire, like literally like a year after that or something like that, and Me, Myself, and Irene, and Bridget Jones' Diary, and recently, if you want to watch a really good movie she was in, I would highly recommend going to watch Judy, which is about Judy Garland, and she is so great in that, and I think really adds a lot of sympathy to Judy Garland as a person that we maybe didn't really think of before that. But as in go and watch the movie, the Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Next Generation, however you want to say it. Honestly, it's a slasher movie, so I don't mind. You go ahead and watch it. It's way better than the Critters because it's a different style, but way better than Critters. All right, for the last actor, I'll make sure to move this one quick too. Is Paul Rudd. maybe in Paul Rudd, I struggled with a little bit because maybe I kind of think I can view him in a horror movie, but he's in one of my favorite film franchises of all time, which is Halloween. He's in the sixth one specifically. He gets to play Tommy, which is the kid that Laurie babysat in the first one. He didn't play in the first one; it's a different actor, but he got to play in the sixth movie, and this was like one of his first movie roles. The it's yeah, Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers is what the dude. I always say the fourth, fifth, and sixth like Halloween movies all kind of run together, but in this one you kind of get you start to learn that Michael Myers, like the reason that he was like resurrected in the fourth one is that there's like a cult behind everything, this druid like cult or whatever called the Thorn, and he was resurrected as a way to take out humans and cause havoc type thing. And this Man in Black character that's kind of showed up through the last few movies is like the head of the hospital that he escaped from and was like best friends with Dr. Loomis type thing. So it's so convoluted. And at the beginning we get Jamie, who's like the character from the last two. She has like a baby, and it's kind of implied that she was forced into that pregnancy, and the baby is supposed to be kind of either like a sacrifice for Michael or something like, dude. And she dies right off the bat. So it's a different actress than who we had in the fourth and fifth movie, but still losing another character, legacy character, not great. But his character, Paul Rudd's character is Tommy, and he's obsessed with Michael Myers. He's like not like he's like he wonders why he did it kind of thing more so. Kind of obsessed with that true crime thing, and he like lives across from the Myers house, which is now occupied by like some of Laurie's family because Laurie's dead in this timeline. It's convoluted. Halloween has one of the more convoluted timelines in horror film franchises, you know? But yeah, he survives towards the end. He like saves the baby, and he saves like a bunch of other children who are all part of this like cult thing. It's dumb. I really would not recommend it. Now watching the other ones, like the fourth and fifth one, and obviously the other original Halloween and the second one and stuff like that, go watch that. But don't watch the sixth one. That's I beg of you, just skip over that one. But yeah, dude. Before that, he was just on like TV shows, is what I was reading. He was on like something called Sisters, where he played a guy named Kirby, and then he was on a show called Wild Oats. He played Brian. I don't know what the, and then Runaway Daughters, where he plays a guy named Jimmy. So he did a bunch of things, like a bunch of random things right before doing that movie. But then he did that movie as well as in the same year he did Clueless. It seems like that's kind of like a common theme is that everybody like the same year would eventually blow like would break out into a starring role or within the next few years. But Paul Rudd is since then has been known as like a legend, like kind of this comedy legend. He would be on Friends eventually a few years after that, and I love Role Models is like one of my favorite movies that he's ever done. I think Role Models is absolutely fantastic. And think about him like he's another one of those Marvel Universe guys, you know? He's Ant-Man. He's got his own movies. He's got a few of them. And people love the Ant-Man movies. And I think Paul Rudd is a good guy and truly deserves, I think, all the success that he's had. And I love watching Halloween. Even though the Halloween 6 is just a terrible movie, I don't mind that. But yeah, those are just a few actors. I was looking up and there's like others. Like I was saying, Viggo Mortensen's one of them. There's just tons of other actors that starred in horror movies kind of early in their career and would eventually become known for different things, obviously. So you can't blame them for trying to get a check and just trying to put their name out there. But yeah, let's that's really all I have to say about that, friends. All right, friends. Thank y'all for tuning in to episode 21 of the Odd Thoughts podcast. I really appreciate the chance to get to talk up on the microphone to y'all, and I appreciate everybody for listening. If you want to listen to the any of my episodes at all, you can always find me on YouTube or Spotify podcast. I'd also appreciate if you subscribe to my podcast on either one of those platforms. If you want to stay tuned in, just in general, you can follow me on all my social medias. I have a Facebook, which goes by Gunther Getlicker, which is my name. Both those G's are uppercase. I also have a Instagram, which goes by Gunther underscore Getlicker. Both those G's are lowercase. And then I have a Twitter, which is at one Mike GG. Both those G's are uppercase. And if you find any of this relatable and you enjoy any of this, just show it to other people. Comment down below. I love the engagement. I truly, truly do. And I just want to make sure that I grow this as much as possible. But, anyways, I appreciate everybody for listening. I love y'all. Make sure to show up for yourselves every single day and be excellent to each other.